I think the first thing I am going to do is open up SQL Server, and I'm doing this on the underlying machine, which you can't do because you don't have permissions. But I do have permissions on this machine. So I'm going to open up SQL Server Management Studio. And I was debating this as I was sitting on the train. I wanted to show you a correct way or just show a fast and dirty way, and I decided I'd try to do it correct. So I think I might have to download a database also. Let's see what I got here. Nothing. So I am going to go to GitHub. Have I showed you guys GitHub? I think I did briefly. If you haven't played with GitHub much, it is an extremely valuable site. It's free. You can create your own account. You can put code there that you can share with employers. It also is a really good tool for version control. So if you have multiple people working on the same thing, you can all access it, but it'll keep track of each of the versions. It's all free if you keep it public. If you want it private, it costs money.
You can have it private. If you go on GreenSpark, they have a student package for student package, and they give you a private account, and they give you like $600 worth of tools.
Oh, wow.
So you have to go on GreenSpark and do like a GitHub package. Whatever.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So if you were doing something that you think would eventually make you money, you'd probably want it private. If you're just doing stuff for classes and stuff, you could display it there. Also, it works really well with, for this class, it wouldn't have been that relevant, but for a coding class, it works really well for where to post your code, and you just post the link in Canvas. And Canvas actually works pretty well with GitHub. So what I'm going to here is I have repositories, and I'm going to go get a database. And I'm going to get the Community Assist database. And although it's prettier this way, I'm going to make it raw. So it's just text. Going to Control A, Control C. And I will run the query in here. So neat thing about SQL is I said you can recreate a database just like that. God didn't do it. I don't have permission either. All right, if I don't have permission, this could be slow. Although I think I do have, if this fails, I have another virtual machine up, I believe. Will that work? Is that what I'm logged in as? So, well, let's do object types, advanced. You're seeing how to add a Windows user if it lets me. Find now. It's interesting, I don't have a user for me. It's not iUser. Everyone? No. Great. I don't know if I'm in that group or not. Let's do that. No. So let's, rather than fight with this, I will do the virtual machine. I'm going to leave that up and I still need it. So VMware. If I had got here earlier, I would have had this set up. So this is actually the virtual machine that I'll be using for 172 this winter quarter. So it has, the only difference between it and the one we have is that it does have Visual Studio installed. So once it gets up and going, we can get going here. Oh, that's not good. It is way too big. Why is it so big? There it goes. All right. Mine is doing that thing that yours is doing too.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Or is it right there? So I may have to undo and re-maximize.
It's really weird. You just play with it, and then all of a sudden it works.
Yeah. So, and then maximize again. It's still there. So anyway, I'm going to open up, hopefully I can work in this, the SQL Server Management Studio. There it is. We'll see if that database is there. If not, I will, now it's going to want to restart. This actually will be a little different probably next time, because it'll probably go to Windows 10 instead of Windows 8. All right, so we'll try again. Management Studio. I know the most boring parts of this is watching the setup, so I usually try to do it before. And hopefully this will load. There it goes. Do I have any databases? I already have Community Assist, so I don't have to download it. I'm going to look at one other thing. Under Programmability, Stored Procedures. Come on, you can do it. Okay, we have new donation, which is I think what I'm going to use. I'm going to script it real quickly. Script stored procedure as create to new window. So you can see, because I was going to talk about stored procedures too a little bit. One of the things that you should do if you can is, boy, that's big. I'm going to reset the font. I hope they get new windows by next quarter. I'm gonna actually take it down to like, let's do 14. It's a little better. If you can, it's better not to do your kind of SQL in the client when you're writing the web page, or do a minimum amount of it. It's really better if you have like stored procedures here. That way you can control things on the database level. And you can, this is a stored procedure that allows a person that's never donated before to donate. You guys haven't seen the ones with the @ symbols. So those are variables. So in SQL, every variable has to have an @ symbol at the beginning. And then we're just declaring data types for those variables, just like you do when you create a table. So these are all parameters. That means they all have to be passed in. So if we're going to use a form, basically if we call this stored procedure, we have to provide it last name, first name, and all of these things, right? It'll just, they'll have to come in through the form. State and city have a default. So if you don't enter them, they automatically get a default. Washington. If you enter something else, what else you enter overtakes it, replaces that. The as is the beginning of the actual stored procedure. Declare, these are where I declare some internal variables. The output ones are parameters. They have to be passed into the procedure. These are internal. That's why I have to declare them. And I give them some types. So the email type is an int, the phone type is an int, the person key is an int, and the declare employee key is an int. The type for email is it work or home? The phone type is it cell, that kind of thing. The email type, I just set them. I hard coded them, which is probably something you wouldn't want to do, but I did it just for this. Yeah.
What exactly is a stored procedure? What is it equivalent?
That's actually a good question. I probably should have started with that. A stored procedure is just SQL, but it's like several commands that are stored together. And unlike a regular SQL, so it's executable and it's executed as a single process.
Sound like a function or a method, maybe?
It is. It's kind of like a program, actually, because it is executable as a whole. Yeah.
Is it like a recipe that like automatically creates itself? Not creates itself, but like an automated recipe where you push a button and it uses those ingredients to make
One of the things that a stored procedure could do, so like this is going to do an insert in the community assist table, and we did inserts, where you have to insert like an order in the pizza place, you have to insert into 3 tables. It's similar with the donor. You'd have to actually insert into 4 tables. So rather than make somebody do 4 separate insert statements, this stored procedure will do all 4 of them, right? And it'll test them to make sure that they're good. So there's some error trapping in here. Remember I told you about begin tran? That's where you begin a transaction. I showed it briefly in the context of updates, because if you update that, if you don't put a criteria on an update, it changes everything. So you could change every last name to Smith or something like that. So if you manually declare the transaction, you can control that, and it allows you an undo. Okay? There's no undo if you don't explicitly do your begin try. If you've ever done any programming with try catch, it's exactly the same thing. It tries the code. If there's an error, it throws it into the catch. I'm not expecting you to know how to do this. This is just a show and tell. It's better to do this through a stored procedure than to write the code directly into the web form, which you can do, and is done commonly. It's just easier to hack it if it's in the web form. And you have to, if you're a database person, it means you have to trust the developer, and there is no trust there. And should be. There are good developers and there are not good developers. People that understand how to validate all the fields and people that don't, kind of thing. So a stored procedure, a lot of times, particularly on an enterprise level, less common when you're doing somebody personal website or something. But typically what they'll do is they'll give you a list of stored procedures that you can use and the parameters and what they return. And it's like what they call an API, an application programming interface. And so if you're writing a web form or something to talk to this database, you have to talk to it through the web services. Or, as I'll show you next, if you take the 172, you can create a service that even further separates the developer from so the people that write the service talk to the stored procedures, and the people that write the web page should talk to the service. So they're even more removed from the database. This is just testing to see if that person exists, because I don't want a double entry. So if they exist, we just ignore the entry. So if they don't exist, then what we're going to do is basically, this is something that we don't need to worry about too much, but basically what it does is it hashes their password. And then it inserts into person. We get the key from the new insert from person. Remember, you always had to either look that up. Ident current only works if it's an identity, only if it's an auto number. But these are, so you can do that. And then I insert into person address, and then I insert into person contact. I give them twice, one for email and one for phone. And then I end that part. All right, that's if they don't exist. If they do exist, then the only thing I am going to do, I'm going to get their person key, because I need that. That's what this whole statement is about, is just finding their person key. And then I insert into donation, because I'm not going to turn away their donation just because they're already in the database. Okay, and then if everything is good, if there's been no errors, I'm going to commit the transaction, which means actually write it to the database. But if there is an error, I'm going to roll back the transaction. I'm going to undo all of them. One of the advantages of this is that you don't accidentally get the donor left in the person thing, but no donation. The other thing is you don't, so that you'd have a person in your database that doesn't do anything because the donation failed. Or it's possible the person could fail, but the other two could somehow succeed or something, and you'd have fragments. So that's unlikely because of referential integrity, but whatever. If there are any errors along the way, it undoes all the statements. This prints the error message, which actually won't work for us. It works within the SQL Server environment, but it doesn't work for the code end of it. So I just wanted to show you, because I'm going to use that. It'll make our life easier. Otherwise, in the web form, I'd have to write all of these insert statements, and gather all the stuff in the forms and validate and etc. So I just wanted to show that this works. The other thing I want to check real quickly, we should do this not under an admin thing, so I want to see what my logins are. So I think I have, let's see, under security logins, I do not have a donor login. I think under security for the database, registered donor user, donors login, I have both of those. Let's do donors login. I'm just curious what I have there. You can script anything. So this is without login. So I think I want to delete it.
What does that mean?
Anything you want, like say we have a table. So login, and I just deleted it, so I'm going to do donor login. This is, there's still, I'm going to simplify things. So with password equals, and I'm not going to stress my memory.
Mhm.
All right. And then I'm going to create, oh, actually I need to say use community assist. Create user, and I'm going to just leave it the same, donor login for login, donor login. Okay, so let's do that. So I have a new login. I think there's a role pre-built. So let's look under security, roles, database roles. Nope. I didn't want to do all this stuff either, but create role, donor role. And then I'm going to grant select I think it's on person. So we have to actually insert too. So let's just select insert on person to donor role. All of this is just getting set up. I'm sorry. Grant select insert on person address to donor role. That's one word. Grant select insert on person contact to donor role, and then the last grant select insert on donation. Okay, to donor role. Okay, so if I do that, I have now a role with all those permissions. So the last thing I have to do is, this is a built-in stored procedure and you can execute it. So it's sys add role member, I believe. Add role. Why is it not giving it to me?
I'm using that typo.
What? I'm just wondering why it's not giving me this add role number. Okay. So stored procedures. Is it SP? I think it's SP add role number. And then it wants to know the name of the role. And the name of the member, which is donor login.
I think it's,
It doesn't matter the caps, but did I spell something wrong?
I think it's just these sys.sp.
Well, that's just the sys is the what they call the schema. So actually, so this is all ready now. I can go to Visual Studio. So what I've done is I've created a login for a donor, and we're not gonna have the donor login, but we'll use that as a string to connect with. And the thing is that they don't have admin permissions. You should never connect from a website to a database with admin permissions. It's just too dangerous. So I made a login that I can use. Actually, there's one other thing I need to check on. I'm going to right click on the SQL Server. I'm going to do properties. I'm going to do security. It's only a SQL Server thing, so I need to change that to allow for SQL Server and Windows authentication mode, because what we just created was a SQL Server authentication mode. I'm going to do OK. Let's do OK, and what that message said is that it won't do that unless I restart. And so I'm going to restart. And am I sure? Yes. And it's going to ask, well, actually that was only twice it asked. Couple of notes, if you change the mode, you do have to restart SQL Server. Restarting the Management Studio has no effect on SQL Server. You have to actually restart the server. If you're doing this in production in real life, that's a major issue. Restarting the server is something you don't want to do casually. Here it doesn't matter. So I am ready. I'm going to start Visual Studio. Now Visual Studio, there is a free version that's actually pretty good. What is it called? They have a new name for it. But the free version is actually, if you're not going to be a programmer, the free version, if you want to play with programming, is fine. It's got C#, it's got Visual Basic, it's got C++. I mean, it's got all these languages. It just doesn't have all the tools. This is enterprise level Visual Studio. It's like $2,700 a copy. Actually, I think it's more than that. I think it's more like $6,000 a copy. You can get it for free through DreamSpark, though. The only thing with this is that it is huge. So if you have a laptop with limited disk space, I mean, it takes like 30, 40 gigs if you install everything. The other thing is that it could be confusing if you're a novice programmer, although I use it. I never touch most of the menus. There is so much that you can, menus are way up there, but there's so much that you can do in this. It's really meant for professional teams of programmers that are developing things like Windows and Word and things like that. But you can do simple things in it too. So I'm going to do File, New, and I'm going to open a website. Get an ASP.NET, an empty website. I'm just going to leave it as empty. And I'm going to, there we go. What do I want to name it? How about demo website? Although I could do donor or something too. Now notice where the path is. It's going to Visual, My Documents. Documents, Visual Studio 2015, or whatever it is, 2015. Websites, website 1. Didn't change the name. Oh well, website 1 will work. Donor website then. You can put this, and this isn't relevant for the demo, but notice you have some choices: file system, HTTP, or FTP. So if you do file system, it just puts it in the file system, and it runs it on what they call an IIS stub. Does anybody know what IIS is? Internet Information Server. It's like Apache on other machines. It's a web server. So it actually, when you call for a web page, you go to the web server, and it finds the web page if it's there and puts it up for you. So that's what IIS is. you do HTTP, that's what you get. You have put it in IIS. And if you if you have it on a remote site, which is likely, you can FTP to it and use this, kind of like Dreamweaver will let you manipulate files on a remote site. This will also. All of that to the side. I'm just going to do OK. And in the Solution Explorer over here, we have our files. I did an empty website, so there's nothing there except the web config file, which we will use in a minute. Well, maybe we should do it first. I'm going to double click the web config file. See if I can remember how to do this. There are other tools. I'm doing this in a fairly old-fashioned way too. The configuration file is, anybody recognize what this is? Well, it's XML actually. Yeah. A web browser wouldn't recognize this. It's XML. And one of the things that we can do, and I think connection strings. So I'm going to add a connection string, and I'm going to add connection string equals, so what is it? I should have this memorized. Server. Why am I having trouble remembering this? I've done a billion of them. I know it's not server. That's what I want to say, but it's not server. Data source equals backslash SQL Express. And then the initial catalog equals community assist. No quotes. Semicolon, and then okay, so this is where I want to put I think it's user equals donor login password equals pass. So if I got everything right, we'll find out when I connect. This is telling me what the server is. Initial catalog is what the current database is that we want to use. The user is donor login. Password is pass. Then and then the other thing, what is it that it doesn't like there? Oh, I need to give it a name.
How risky is it that you're putting a password there? Like,
Well, so one reason I'm doing it in the this configuration file rather than in the web page, because when you talk to a database, the first thing you have to do is connect. I'm putting it in the web config file because it is on the server and it's totally unavailable to anyone that's accessing the web page. If you put it in the code on the web page, there's a chance they could get into debug mode and see it. But here they should never be able to see it. That's why I'm doing it here. And then I have to give a name to this, which I will call Community Assist Connection, which is probably too long a name, but that's okay. So yeah, the config file is a good place to store that. There are wizards that'll do some of this for you, just to let you know. And they put it they will put it in here too.
Test it, Pablo.
What?
It says community access connection is test it, Pablo.
Oh, yeah. Which doesn't matter, except that I would mean I would type it right in the other place. Okay, so the configuration file, there's lots of things you can put in the configuration file, as I said. And there are wizards. If you ever want to play with this, there are wizards that'll make your database connection for you. They do a really nice, quick, dirty job of making the connections. They are totally insecure, and you probably shouldn't use them. Why Microsoft added them, I'm not sure. So I am going to go back. This is saved, or it isn't saved, but I will save it. I'm going to go back to the server, not the Server Explorer, Solution Explorer. I'm going to add a website, a web page. Come on. So I'm going to add slow. This won't take too long. I'm going to add a web form. I'm going to leave it as default. Default is Microsoft's version of index. You can change the behavior of the IIS to accept index instead if you prefer. This probably looks pretty kind of familiar. You guys done web stuff? So it's just an HTML. Now notice it is both. They're hedging their bets. It is both HTML5 and XHTML. You could delete this line if you want. You don't have to have the XHTML there. The other thing that's you probably wouldn't see, you might, if you did PHP, you might sort of see what the syntax is. This is telling the server, notice this means that it's not HTML. One of the things that they do, browser behaviors that's prescribed by the people that prescribe what, World Wide Web Consortium, is that they ignore things they don't understand. So it will ignore this, but the server will recognize that line. And it will understand that there's a code in C# that it needs to handle. I actually auto event wire up. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I will look. Code file. There's a separate code file for this, and it inherits a template called the default.
So in terms of browser behavior with C#, I mean, like with JavaScript and whatnot, like you put the JavaScript at the bottom, it'll, load the page and then run JavaScript. How does it handle?
So this goes to the, notice where it says server here. This is another attribute you usually don't see. So anywhere you have run at equals server, it will take that alerts the server that you're running non-HTML code. Now see, browsers understand JavaScript.
Yeah.
They don't understand C#.
Right.
They don't understand PHP either, for that matter.
And that's one thing with JavaScript. One of the things, let's maybe a little bit on the side that, so one of the acronyms we've heard quite a bit is like single page applications, which is,
Right.
big thing with JavaScript languages now. So is C# capable of that, or would you have to?
You could do that. So I tend to make multiple page things, but there's a couple of ways to do C#. One is the page behind, which is what we're going to do. So it just puts the code outside. It's like an include, to something in PHP. You can also, the one reason why there's a run at server, you can put a script tag in the head, and you could do all of your code in that script tag. Right.
But like with single page applications with JavaScript, they usually use like Ajax or something like that to dynamically exchange information back and forth. So,
And you can do it.
so okay.
So one of the things is you can do all the JavaScript you want here. JavaScript is client side, C# is server side. So you can mix into here all the JavaScript you want. In fact, a lot of the controls, so we have a toolbox over here. Oh, come on, there are two usable controls. There we go. So we have a lot of built-in tools over here that you can drag and drop on here. Most of them render as JavaScript.
So, but in terms of C# itself, only does server side.
Well, it's only process server side because the browser can't understand it. And same as with PHP, you can write all the PHP in the page you want, but it has to be interpreted at the server because the browser doesn't understand. The only languages that the browser, well, it depends on the browser a little bit. All browsers understand HTML and JavaScript. Some browsers also understand other XML languages. A lot of them will do, trying to remember the one that they use for vector analysis. So if you're drawing, you can draw pictures, do vector drawings with XML. SVG, yeah, a lot of them understand SVG. Some of them understand MathML, which is an XML language for displaying equations. But those aren't required. Those are features. Okay, no, that's a good question. Yeah, you can do, I'm not going to today, but you could do all the JavaScript you want. And in fact, Microsoft, so I'm not going to do this today because we don't have time really, but they have validation controls. So you can just drag a control and attach it and it'll make it required or not required. But what they use underneath, before you can use the validation controls, you have to download jQuery because they're using jQuery to do that. They also use jQuery for their Ajax. They didn't used to. They had their own Ajax engines, but jQuery is better. So Microsoft has even gone to using jQuery for those things. So I'm going to create the form. Well, first I'll do a simple like a P. The other thing, just because it's Microsoft, you can do all of your CSS stuff, right? I'm not going to do any CSS here, but that's how you should format the pages. Most of these controls have lists of properties where you can change the color and stuff, but they render as inline styles. But you should actually just ignore those and do your own CSS pages. And the other thing that Microsoft did, and this is not super relevant either, but they used to allow you to drag and drop for position on a web page, but the result of that was something that was so non-compliant to the World Wide Web Consortium that they dropped it. So now to position things, you have to use CSS to set it up, which is better. It's more work, but it's better. So I'm going to say, let's call it donor registration. And this is just straight HTML, right? One of the problems with doing web development in any language, C# or anything else, is that you have to know so many things. You have to know HTML. You have to know CSS. You have to know database. You have to know the underlying programming language that you do. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on in these pages. I think they're more complicated than the traditional applications. So I am going to, some people will groan, but I'm going to make a table to do my form in because I do not want to spend an hour doing CSS. Tables I work pretty well for form. Totally, they should never be used to organize a page. Although when I first started HTML, that was the only way to organize a page. And I'm going to, just within each table row, we'll do a couple TDs. If you don't know HTML, this will all be. Now, Microsoft also has a table object that you can use where you can drag it in. And like most of these tools have HTML equivalents. Factories give you more options that are related to the coding, right? So they have more attributes, more features than the HTML ones would have. And I don't use their table much because if you embed a control inside the table, it's a control inside of a control. And it means you have to loop through the containing control to find the internal control to access it, and it's just not worth it. So I'm going to real quickly, I'm just going to say enter first name, and then I am going to use a control for this, which is a text box. They render as inputs, but I am going to do a text box. The main advantage to text box is that they have run at server. I'll just do this as, let's just do first name. And that's actually all I need for that. I wish I had better, I hate how the code. Notice the Microsoft controls. I'm just trying to get it so it's on page. They render as XML. Okay. So the controls are XML within the HTML. All right, so that gives me, I'm going to drop this to, so I have a prompt and a text box. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to copy that. And notice the text box renames itself. So I'll do last name. And I'll just change that to last name. I'm trying to remember what all I have to do here. There's a lot of them. There was, yeah, probably street. There's street. Address. No, go ahead.
Just, on the form, does the values that you enter, does it get stored kind of like PHP on the server, like key value?
Yes, yes, these get stored and they can be accessed from code, which is why I'm doing that.
Is the ID then the key?
The ID is the key, right? And notice that it's in caps. That's to differentiate it from the lowercase that's standard in HTML. Although if you're using HTML5, it's case insensitive. If you're using XHTML, then it's all lowercase. But that's why it was originally why it's in caps. But the run at server also tells it to treat this separately. But yes, you're right. It basically creates a key value pair for that, for the name. So I'm going to do, we got street. Now, city and state were preloaded. I'm just not going to do those for time. What else do we need? Let me look real quickly. We do need email, phone number, and password, I think. I still am not. I'm still not really in full screen mode. So let's do city, state. Did I have zip as a thing? I don't remember. So I do need zip. And I need email, phone, and donation amount. I think that's all I left that I need. Password? Oh yeah, plain password. Where I didn't close it. Where is it? Please tell me I didn't close it. I have another horrible suspicion. Am I running the Visual Studio off the?
I mean, yeah, because I can't find it in the VM.
Well, it's not in your VM. I have a different VM. However, I think, yeah, wrong Visual Studio. I think I can fix this without too much labor. Except that I'm afraid that it's the wrong Visual Studio. I'm hoping I can catch up to where I was in 2 seconds here. File. Come on, file. Open. Shh. Never mind. I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish this. I could finish the code to show you, but I can't run it, I don't think.
Is this similar to the PhD class we did, like, you will analyze form and then connect to the database?
Right. Let me, I'll just do it. I'll just finish the code that was in the Visual Studio. But I'm not going to be able to run it. I went into the virtual machine and it says that the Visual Studio has expired. So I'd have to go get a key. It's just going to take too long. But I'll show you the rest of the code. So let's just reopen the donor website. So I'm going to add like the password. And I think that might be, we'll add password in. So we'll do email first. And I'll do one more for password. And text box 1, I'll change that to email text box. And then password. Now, one of the things you can do with a password text box, and you should probably do a confirm password thing, but there's another attribute you can do, which is text mode. And text mode is equal, I'm going to say password. And what that does is it makes it so it's not plain text. It puts the dots over it. I'm going to do one more thing in here, which is I'm going to put a button here instead of the text there. And I'll put a label here, which is where I would put like the error messages and stuff. And I'll just call it label error or error label. And then button, I could leave it as button 1, but I'm going to do owner. There's actually one other donation thing, would be the donation, but since I can't run it, it doesn't matter. So if I go to design view, whoa, why is it not doing my, did I leave out some table rows when I copied? Let's go back to the source. Yeah, I think I left out the table rows.
Wait, there's all one TR tag.
I've got one, but I need to close.
I think it's Visual Studio. So it's got some, using it, but I'm using Visual Studio.
Can you do that on Dreamweaver?
Yeah, but you can't do the C#. I'm not getting all my beginning TRs. Let me do this. TR, TD, TD, TR. This is just because I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing. Let's look at it now. That's better. So this is just a simple form, like you would do on a web page. I'm going to do, as I said, I'm going to do the code. We can't run it because I did this on the underlying machine instead of and the database is on the other side of the machine. But you saw the pieces. You saw the store procedure, saw this. I didn't label the button. I can change the label. You could do CSS to make this all pretty. I'm just going to double click the button. And when I double click the button, it takes me to the code page. And one of the things that they do by default is they give you a code page that's separate from the HTML page, just to keep it cleaner. You don't have to do that. You could, as I said, do a script tag and write all your code in the page. But typically they do it behind. Also, a lot of times the really sophisticated users ignore the HTML altogether, and you can do the whole thing in C# if you want. Kind of like you can do PHP echo. You can also write out the HTML in the C# code, and there are ways to do that. But in this, so we have our connection, right? Our connection is made, but I need to, I'm going to initialize the connection. Oh, there's one other thing I need to do. Up here, I need to add some libraries. Using system.data and using system.data.sql client. There are other clients. There's an Oracle client. It doesn't ship with a MySQL client, but you can download one. So you can do different databases. Okay, so down here I'm going to do SQL connection and I'm going to call it connect equals new SQL connection. And I should make my font smaller. Just because I can't get very much on a page. And where's fonts? Fonts and colors. Actually, it is pretty small. It's just so huge. So in here, I'm going to do so I'm trying to get the, is it configuration manager? You know what? I have to add that too. I'm just trying to remember the syntax for this. So I named this Community Assist, right? It says connection. Is that what I named it?
Would it come up if you had named it that? Or no? Like sometimes the tables autofill.
I'm just looking at, you know, it's a set, since I'm not going to run it, it won't matter too much. But I'm just wondering what the error is.
It is case insensitive, right?
Yeah, it is actually. I don't think this is what the issue is. Connection strings. It's been a long time since I've done it this way. The main thing is you have to make that connection. And what I want is to read it from what the configuration manager does is it allows you to see the connection strings. But I'm just trying to think, if it isn't equal, what would it be? Oh, I know what it is. It's a collection of connection strings. I'm going to break the line so that's on there. As I said, it's been a while since I've done it this way. So what you do, and this is the same in PHP or any other language, you basically have to connect to the thing. What the configuration manager here is just saying, go read the XML file, right?
So this one, you're making the connection, but you don't actually have to give it the password yet?
The password is in the
XML file.
It's in the XML
So
file.
that way you can actually connect to the database
Right.
and select data.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things we'll have to do, there's a couple of other objects I'm going to make. I'm going to make a SQL command object. So I'm just going to call it CMD. And this will run the SQL, which our SQL is actually going to be very simple. So I'm going to say that the connection for this is connect, because it needs to know how to connect to the database. So it's going to use the connection we've defined up above. And I'm going to do the connection, the command type equals command type stored procedure. And then I'm going to do command text. It's going to be the name of the stored procedure, which is SP new donor login. Okay, so the name of the stored procedure. How do you know this? The IntelliSense helps, but you just got to read it or have somebody tell you. There's no way to intuit this. That's true of programming in general. You know, it's an artificial language. Any languages, and you just have to have somebody show you, or you have to read it. Or the other thing I need to do is with the command, I need to add parameters. So, and I'm going to just do value. And so for each parameter, basically, I'll do like at. They need to have the same name as in the actual stored procedure. But I'm going to just do like at last name. This isn't going to run. And then I would do like last name text box dot text. So I just assign the text there. Now you probably shouldn't do this. You should validate the text box first and assign it to a variable, and then move the variable in there. Yeah, to make sure that it's not like a. Now the text box actually has some built-in protections against SQL commands. So if you do certain characters, it'll treat them as illegal. But that aside, you still should validate that text box first. But this is sort of the pattern, and I'm going to do just a few of them since it's not going to run. But I would do this. I would add a parameter. You need to add a parameter for every field there. So this is the name of the parameter, and it should match what's in the stored procedure. And then this would be like a first name text box dot text. And what the dot text is doing is the first name text box is the name of the object, but that object contains text, and we want to get the text out of the object. Does that make sense? So you do that for everything in the parameter, and you're basically just taking the stuff from the form, and again, I'm skipping the validation, but you're taking the stuff from the form and assigning it to the parameters, which will go to the stored procedure, which actually runs the code. So the last parts, I mean, I would have to do that for everyone, but I'll just do this. I'm going to do connect.open. So up until this point, nothing has happened. We're just setting it up. Here I'm opening the connection. I'm going to do command execute non-query, because everything except a select is considered a non-query. And then I'm going to do connect.close. Connections to the database don't close automatically, because you might want to do multiple things with a single connection. So you do need to manually close it. And that's actually all the code. Once you've set it all up, which is a pain, then it's not too hard to actually. This will basically, what this does is it calls the stored procedure, passes all the parameters to it, does the insert, and then comes back, closes it. Now Microsoft has made ways to make this easier. But I didn't want to. They're harder to explain initially, and they also don't show the connection to the databases clearly. They have a thing called entity ADO entities, which basically you can take all your tables from your database, and it'll turn each table into a C# class, and then you can talk to those classes and not have as an insert, update, and select, and delete method. Yeah.
So like this is the way you actually deploy the web internally. Like this had to be our internal network?
Well, this could be. I mean, this could be internal, or it could be totally. I mean, it could be intranet or internet.
Could it be just like, have the user go to the actual world website,
It could be an actual website. Yeah.
and then
The connection. So, in either way, you'd want to be somewhat secure. So. I mean, basically, the difference between intranet and internet is just that you have to log in. They're all still available,
and then, so I guess because this is the Microsoft SQL, like we want, when you learn the PHP class, we also have MySQL. So I guess there's different.
There's actually lots of different ones. So MySQL is really popular because it's free. And MySQL is really pretty good at being basically a management content system. It is not what I would suggest your first choice should be if you're going to do anything like with credit cards or anything like that, because it is not secure very much.
So you want to run this like storage credit card information, it's a client credit information through this.
Well, so SQL Server costs money. So there's other options. There's like Postgres, which is a open source free database that is a much more robust database than MySQL, but it's also, because of that, harder to use. Actually, what I would suggest, unless you're writing it internally for a fairly large company, I would suggest using PayPal or something. Yeah, just you can create the front end, and you can just take their credit card information when they want to enter their credit card information for sale and stuff like that. I would suggest just, if not PayPal, then some other commercial company that would then be responsible for the security and stuff for it.
Even the PayPal, found out, I think even the PayPal nowadays, people can actually take the credit card information. You don't need to have a PayPal account to use it.
Yeah, I mean, PayPal's tried to become much more broad, and there are other company, software you can buy that will handle the credit card information. It's just that that's really dangerous to handle, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're opening up a world of risk. Same thing like if you have to take social security numbers and things like that. So anything like that, if you have to write it for yourself, you could do it in PHP, you could do it in MySQL, but you would need to encrypt it. And even then there's a little, kind of like with the target, did I mention this? There's a point. The trouble is that you entered your PIN and your number into the system, and then it's encrypted and then saved. But for a few moments, it's in plain text in the RAM of the device you've entered it into. What hit target, they were encrypting all their information, but they weren't skimming the database. They were skimming the device, the RAM, before it was encrypted. And with websites, that can happen too, because you enter it as plain text, and it can be encrypted immediately, but there's a few seconds there where it's not encrypted. And if you can skim it at that point.
So for the PHP ones, when you get the get and post, and then there's the encryption function for it, well, that means they only get encrypted on the server side. Oh, you get encrypted.
Well, you probably want to, if you're doing a Git post, you probably want to do an encrypt before you post. I mean, you'd want to do an encryption as soon as possible. You wouldn't want to pass it through the HTTP.
So then the encryption is like JavaScript.
I don't know how, does anybody, JavaScript isn't my, does anybody know, does JavaScript have robust encryption?
Because I think the PHP encryption is only encrypted once they get it.
Right, so, and the C# encryption would be encrypting on the server also. I don't know if JavaScript, actually one of the huge complaints, JavaScript is taking over the world. Pretty much everything on the web is, I mean, it's become the default programming language for the web, even beyond C# and Java, because you can do almost everything with JavaScript now. But as far as I can tell, JavaScript is incredibly insecure. So, what? Because it doesn't, it's all on the browser. It's all, you can get to it. I mean, you can put it, you can call, you can do scripts, but you can actually get those scripts usually too, unless you're careful. If you use Node.js, yeah, things like that. But I don't know that it does any encryption. I don't know that it does. I mean, there's all sorts of things that I'm not sure of with JavaScript. JavaScript has evolved a lot in the last few years, and I'm not on it as well as other things. But I know that Ed hates JavaScript. The thing with most things is there are secure ways to do things and there are not secure ways to do things. And the trouble with the web is that you are exposed to the entire world. So you need to do things securely. The other problem with the web is that everybody can be a web developer. So security is not a built-in thing.
An example with one page with JavaScript with this interaction with the client. In JavaScript, is hello, it's a different name. Next to the name, all that information is showing to all the site, or
well, it's not necessarily. So there's a thing in there's a thing with sessions, right? So session variables. It's built into the like Apache. It's built into IIS. Every user that comes in with a separate IP address, that has their own session. So there's a session is basically like putting a bubble around it, so that you should only be able to see the stuff that you're doing. You shouldn't be able to see the stuff that other people are doing. Does that make sense? It's an isolation level. So when you come in when you log into a web page, or even if you don't log in, if you just browse to that web page, you have a session going so that the things that you do on the web page are unique to you and other users don't see it. You can use, like I didn't do this here, but you could use a session variable in ASP and Microsoft's thing, so that if that session variable is different, it won't let you see a particular page, right? Or if that session variable is missing, if you haven't established the session variable by logging in or something, you won't be able to see the page.
With some of the open source frameworks that we've worked with, like with PHP or with WordPress, or I think some of the JavaScript, the same thing. Like there are things like they'll put pages in there to redirect you if you try to enter that folder that you're not supposed to be in.
Right. Like one of the things I could do, say we had I'll put this here, it's not working. So if I could do like if session, and let's just give the session name log and user. Now the session name could be anything, it's just a string. If it, let's just say equals null, which means it doesn't exist, then I could say response redirect. We'll redirect them to the login ASPX. So if that session, if they aren't logged in, it'll redirect them back to the login. You don't have to make a separate page for that. It just throws them back. And then if they are logged in, then you can do other things.
I know, like there's certain, like in one of the examples we did, they'll use like an HTML page that if you go to that folder, it opens up the HTML page and says basically you're not allowed to be here. And
well, you could have a page for that, but I usually just redirect them back to the login. But you could have a page say not allowed, no permissions. I think there's probably an HTTP error for that, which might be self-generated. I don't know. It's really complicated though. That's the problem with it all, is it's really complicated. And trying to create a complex site that has a lot of functionality and yet keep it secure and keep it from crashing and stuff, that's a lot of work. And then I can do a lot of that kind of stuff, but I utterly fail at making a site pretty. That's a whole nother set of skills. And unfortunately, employers kind of want both. And they're not necessarily the same personality types or ability sets. So I wish I'd made this work better for you. At least I guess I got an idea. I mean, typically when you're dealing with a database, you would be looking at it as a form. You know, most people, you're dealing with databases all the time. But as far as possible, that's kept invisible to you. Because as you've experienced from building the databases, it's really a pain to actually enter data directly to the database. It's much better to enter it through forms. It's much better to view it through forms. You know, you can output the data and display it on the page however you want. It's just typically there's two aspects to database, and they're not necessarily the same people. One builds the database, builds all the structures in the database. Somebody else usually builds the web forms and applications that talks to the database. In the MySQL world, though, they're often the same person. This is even true under a lot of things that you don't think about, like WordPress is essentially a MySQL database for the management to store all the content, and then it's a whole bunch of tools to create the front end. So as I said, I wish I could make that work better, but if I got here earlier, I might have figured out what was going on. In this, the SQL Server, did I kill the process? It's not running. Oh, this one's on. It told me, I guess it's not there. One is Visual Studio 2013. And the other thing is that the license has expired, which I have a license number somewhere, I just don't know where. Yeah.
For the disaster recovery framework, I will talk about it on Wednesday.
So I talked a little bit about it, and I'm not going to ask too much. So the main thing about disaster recovery is what happens if your hard drive dies? What happens if it burns down? What happens if there's most companies' life database, right? All their profits and losses, all their business, maybe even some of their patent information, stuff that's really critical to the company is probably in that database. If that database is destroyed and there's no backup, then you could be out of business. So disaster recovery is about what kinds of steps would you take to prevent that. On a minimal basis, you should back up your database regularly and store the backups offsite, right? Some companies do like a box at a bank, you know, where you safety deposit box where you just switch out hard drives. There are better solutions that tend to be a little bit more expensive, but bigger companies do what they cluster machines and they do log shipping. So they have multiple machines with copies of the same data. So if one machine dies, it's still got another machine. Ideally, and the bigger the company, the more likely this is, some of those other machines will be way off-site. Like you might have one machine in California that's copying to a machine in New York, possibly that's even copying to a machine in India or somewhere, you know. Although, as a friend of mine said, that all works good in theory, but when you're trying to push a 20 gig file over a 2 meg pipeline.
It take a lot.
It takes a long time, yes. So keeping them current is not always easy.
So for the homework, we just need to talk about like
Just kind of, and it's a very small business, so it'd be mostly just a matter of,
like a paper, you see, as a paper.
well, you could do that.
Just use the routes, like the Dropbox or Microsoft. But
You could,
like online clouds.
so what I would do is I'd probably back up the database, right? And the database should be offsite. One of the things you can do these days, which you couldn't used to do, is you can store those backups on the cloud.
Yeah, like Dropbox.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if Dropbox would be my first choice, but yeah, you could.
There's the Microsoft one. Microsoft has
OneDrive. Yeah. And Amazon has cloud services.
Do they actually just put the backup?
Yes, actually, if you do like, so one of the advantages if you go like Microsoft Azure or Amazon things is that they take total responsibility for the backups and for keeping copies of everything.
But if you use a straight log to upload the like actual data, or do you need to actually run your database on their server?
I think you can back up. I mean, you can store files, so you could store the backup file there. But you can also, they also sell services where you can you can have a server.
Yeah.
In fact, it'd be kind of fun to try. I'm just chatting now. You can ignore me if you want. The Amazon, you can get a server from Amazon for pennies, literally pennies. You can say, I want a Linux operating system with MySQL, PHP, and Apache, and I want it configured this way, and they'll have it for you literally in seconds. And it costs you nothing much until you start using it. They charge you for bandwidth. So as people start to use it, it starts to cost more and more money. But to play with it, it's pretty cheap.
You can actually get a free 1 year. You get like a free 1 year membership through AWS when you sign up. So some of us that are in the 210
Oh,
class,
okay.
you can basically just sign yourself up and get like a whole server set up.
Yeah, you can do that. And Microsoft gives free Azure through DreamSpark, or give for about a year.
Amazon give you the first year.
Free, yeah.
And the same with the package that you get from GreenSpark, you can get the same.
Yeah, you can get the Amazon. I mean, you can get the Azure one. I don't know about
They give you
Amazon.
2 domains for 1 year for free.
Which is, I kind of want to do that because I want to play with the Azure and the Amazon, but I'm a little afraid of what happens after a year. I mean, you could drop it, but.
No, they give it to you. You just have to prove that you're in the school.
Right, but after a year, you have to pay for
Yeah.
it.
But now, how easy is it Azure to use? Is it really? I mean, like most Microsoft things, I think is kind of like.
I'm not sure. So Azure is kind of like the Amazon thing. You can say to Microsoft, I want Windows Server, 2000 and whatever the current one is, and I want IIS, and I want and you can use your local Visual Studio to upload things to it, and you can build a website and all that stuff on it. Again, they charge. Typically, Microsoft charges up front, but then they also charge for bandwidth. As I said, students can have it for free for a year.
But do you know if they also do like can you get Linux on there?
You actually can get Linux from Microsoft. You can have a Linux machine if you prefer. They didn't used to do that. They just started it. And I think from Amazon you can get a Windows machine, but typically they're Linux. So, there's a whole world of stuff. Databases are actually everywhere.
Could you bring up the code again?
Oh, sure. I think the actual code, let me get out of the virtual. I think, So while it shuts down, I will undo that. Did I close the? I may have closed it, but I can reopen Visual Studio. Are you trying to make it work, or? I don't know if you can make it work.
Well, I got a free account.
Oh, okay.
No, I was gonna, she's writing the code, but I was.
Well, you know, one of the things I can do really quickly is I can copy the code to the blog.
Cool. Yeah.
It's not the best work, but I have everything in it. Doesn't like
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, really good.
Sure. That sounds good. You have a question? What's a good question?
What's on the paper?
It'll be open lab. No, but I'll be here. So what, there won't be any final, I think there is a final, but it's just a survey. And then, during finals week, I will be here, though I won't necessarily come in here. I'll come through once in a while to check who's here. Who's not. Should be pretty much open lab all 3 days next week here, if you want them. The other thing is they wipe these machines between quarters.
Yes.
So if you want your stuff, copy them off the machines if you haven't. Yeah, because they totally re-image everything between quarters. Yeah.
Oh, you make a question.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, I.
What?
Oh, I don't
I'm
know.
done. I've been chatting.
So, we're done.
Yeah.
And then this was the same.
Yes. Pretty much. So I'm going to copy the code right now to the blog.
Yeah, I wanna refresh my 172 stuff for my
Yeah.
172 project, so I can post it like as my portfolio.
Oh, sure.
You know, and
I have a lot
I
of
kind of
stuff.
forgot how to use Visual Studio, like how to work with all that.
Yeah.
It's actually.
I'll come back in.
Yeah, maybe.
So we-
And I left off.
Oh,
And then she listen next time she does it today or something.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
missing a little bit.
I'm going to post all of those, yeah.
I just make the notes.
The donor log, yeah, I don't know if I'll do.
Let's do
Oh, for the-
yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to do that. But that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Google.
Being a lesbian. And that's, so she said, you. It's gotta be.
Oh, yeah.
Just that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is there right now.